I happen to believe that Financial Literacy Month is really, really important for all Canadians, young, old, any lived experience, any income level, any asset level. I'm a real fan of improving financial literacy, no matter who you are. There is a demographic, though, that faces additional challenges, and that is newcomers to Canada, right? Like they've got so many different things that they are trying to learn and accommodate and account for. And navigating the financial system in this country is not difficult, especially challenging if English isn't necessarily your first language. So, in Financial Literacy Month this year, we're going to focus on newcomers and think about how we can help those newer to Canada navigate the challenges that are ahead of us. One of the resources we're pulling in on that front is Jason Mullins. He is president and CEO of goeasy. Hello there.
Hey, how are you?
I am well. I know we have a shared belief that newcomers to Canada are a very, very important demographic to this country. Why do you believe so strongly that we need to focus on newcomers?
Yeah, I think it's very clear that as a country, Canada's population growth driven by newcomers is a meaningful contributor to our economic success. Generally speaking, on the world stage, we're still a fairly small country by population with a very big landmass, and we have a lot to offer as a country in welcoming new people here for the chance for safety and prosperity, and therefore they are a very big part of the Canadian history, the Canadian story, and the economic growth of our country in the future.
You have a number of perspectives here. So, of course, you have many, probably hundreds, if not thousands of employees who are relatively new to Canada. It is also a part of the makeup of the clients that you serve. What are some challenges that you see as it relates to newcomers and how they navigate the financial system here in Canada?
Yeah, so as you pointed out, we at goeasy offer consumer loans to Canadian borrowers. Many times newcomers have been challenged with building a credit history and building a credit profile, and therefore turn to organizations like ours as alternative sources of credit because they need to establish building a credit profile, learning about how credit scores work. And generally speaking, although Canada as a country has been progressive and welcoming with increasing the level of immigration here to our country, the financial system is lagging and hasn't structurally caught up. And so much of the core traditional financial system, the major banks, have not really built products and services yet that perfectly cater to that individual. And so generally the biggest issue they face is they come in, they often have had great credit history in the country that they immigrated from. They often have some financial means. In fact, that's often a requirement to immigrate to Canada, but they just lack an understanding of how the Canadian specific financial marketplace works, and they lack the credit history that's needed for them to be able to access credit from traditional banks.
So how do you address that? I mean, at the one end of the spectrum, there is a hard no, like institutions are like, I can't lend you anything. And then on the other hand, there is an easy yes, but at a prohibitive cost. How do you find the balance of risk versus rewards? You're a publicly traded company, you're a business.
Yeah, so it's difficult. I mean, this is something all financial institutions are grappling with and struggle with. The things we're doing are, number one, trying to find ways to use other data sources that we can rely upon to better assess a newcomer's true creditworthiness. Two examples. One, about 2 years ago, we started using consumer banking data to be able to underwrite a borrower as opposed to just the traditional credit report and traditional credit score. So if a newcomer has been here for several months, opened a bank account, and started spending and using that account, we can take that bank information and look at the banking history, the propensity with they receive income and pay bills, and we can use that as another way to be able to underwrite and offer them credit as an alternative to the traditional credit score. Another example, we're working with a firm at the moment to get ready to run a pilot on actually taking in and using credit reporting information from other countries that they may have originally immigrated from, where we can actually look at the bureau data from where they came from and hopefully use that to make a good decision and extend credit. So one way is just trying to use different sources of data that break through the traditional method of evaluating people for credit, and then find a way to extend credit that way. The other way we're trying to approach it is just through the act of financial literacy, helping them just generically understand how our financial system works. We have goeasy Academy that we built and is available online, which is this great free set of resources for how to understand basic information about budgeting and credit scores and access to credit. We are getting ready to offer a course and a program that'll be available through goeasy Academy that people can enroll in and take for free. It'll be available in 8 languages. So that will hopefully educate them on how our financial system works. They'll then hopefully pursue going and getting access to the products that allow them to create a credit file and build a credit file, so that we can then offer them a wider range of credit products in the future.
At the front line of your service offering are a lot of people who are having human to human conversations with newcomers. How do you ready them for that? Because it would seem that there's an importance that they have that they're really grounded, not just in the products and services that you're selling, but in some of the foundational knowledge that's requisite in order to use those products and services responsibly.
Yeah, so three things there. Number one, we hire and recruit new Canadians and make sure that they represent a portion of our employee base, as they are a meaningful part of the customer segment that we serve. So it is at any given time very common that 5 or 10% of our entire employee base will have been recently landed new Canadians. They still don't have full citizenship, and we're hiring them under permanent residency or a work permit and putting them in our branches and teaching them and training them. But it gives a familiar face and personal experience with which they can talk to and communicate with other new Canadians. The second thing we're doing is we're training them. Like when we onboard our employees, we try to impart upon them the improved level of financial literacy that we're hoping to impart on our customers. So we offer a number of courses that are available internally that we put those employees through, so that they get a better sense of how basic credit, basic banking, basic budgeting works, and just better prepares them to be able to communicate with our customers and with newcomers that come in and visit us. And the third thing we do is, we're a very, very multicultural organization. Our employees represent 72 different countries and nationalities, and that allows us to actually staff our branches in all of the communities across Canada with the people that look like the people that live in those communities. So we have a very multicultural employee base that allows customers across Canada from all different backgrounds to know when they come into an Easy Financial branch in their community, they're going to be talking to someone that often has a similar cultural or ethnic background that they can relate to, or maybe even speaks the language that they speak and can help bridge the communication gap.
What have you noticed about building trust for newcomers that might be different from building trust with someone who's been here for 5 generations because they've driven by one of your branches in their neighborhood for a decade, someone who's relatively new, who's trying to figure out which of the institutions, who can I trust, how does taxation work, like all those things that they're trying to learn, again, in a language they may not speak very well. I can imagine that building that trust is, if not exponentially, then certainly somewhat more difficult to do than with someone who's heard of you before and it's no big deal.
Yeah, I think a big part of that is just sitting down and being willing to have an open and honest conversation. It's the best way to build trust. And unfortunately, what happens is a lot of times they go into their local bank branch and assume that that might be the first point of connection for them to our financial system. And the bank system isn't necessarily built to immediately cater to someone just walking in off the street with no bank account or no credit history. The teller experience, if you will, isn't really conducive to having a fulsome conversation. So hopefully they are able to get in touch with the right person at a bank that can get them an appointment or a meeting to sit down and do that education, but that's not always the case. So for us, we make sure that every time someone walks into one of our branches, the purpose and the objective is to get them to sit down, feel warm, feel welcome, and have a conversation. Talk a little bit about what are their financial circumstances. Do they understand how credit works? Explain a little bit about the basic elements of credit. Talk to them about the products and services we offer. Give them the choice to decide if they want to continue to consider doing business with us or not. But at the very least, take the time to have a basic level of communication and relationship building. And I think that just brings down people's guard and gets them to be willing and open and put their trust in us.
I know one of the values of your organization is to ensure that your people are out there in the world. You're shaking hands and kissing babies and meeting people and ensuring that you have connections, regardless of where you are in the hierarchy, with the public, the clients that you serve. If you were to meet a relative newcomer to Canada and have 5 minutes in which to have a one-on-one conversation, and you had an opportunity to give them one piece of advice on navigating their credit in this future that will unfold for them in the next couple of decades, what would that one piece of advice to a newcomer be?
Yeah, so it would for sure be to find and open one new credit trade as quickly as possible. Even if that means it's a secured trade where you've got to provide collateral, even if that means it's a higher cost trade that you may have to pay a little more, even if that means having to get a co-signer like a friend or family member to sort of backstop you. There's going to be some trade-offs on that first line of credit that you open, because the institution is taking, often an unknown risk, and therefore there's a trade-off, whether it's the cost, whether it's the co-applicant, whether it's the security. There's something that often has to be given in exchange. But by opening that initial credit trade, you start to build the all-important credit history. If you look at the construct of a credit score, 2/3 of the algorithm is based upon consistent payment history. There has to be the prevalence of a line item on the credit file that shows on-time payment history in some shape, some format, and that is going to build and accelerate your credit score. And as that happens, it just opens up a much bigger world of possibility for the financial institutions you now have access to and are able to do business with. So that would be number one. Don't overthink, well, I'm going to need an applicant or have to put some cash as collateral. It might be a little more expensive. That is just the means to the end. The end is the objective, which is get a trade under your belt and build the credit.
Yeah, I feel like there's a saying, something like, how do you begin on the journey is take that first step, and what you're describing really
Absolutely.
is the first and probably most critical step. Jason, thank you for your time today.
Very welcome. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Jason Mullins is president and CEO of goeasy. He was here to talk about Financial Literacy Month and specifically the focus on newcomers to Canada.